In the sweltering summer of 1892, the booming textile town of Fall River, Massachusetts, about 50 miles south of Boston, was rocked by a brutal double murder. Andrew and Abby Borden, a wealthy local family, were savagely killed in their own home, victims of a vicious hatchet attack that left them nearly decapitated. The prime suspect, their own daughter, Lizzie Borden, a Sunday school teacher from an outwardly respectable family. Lizzie Andrew Borden was born in 1860 to Andrew and Sarah Borden, members of Fall River's elite social class. Despite their affluence from Andrew's lucrative coffin-making business and investments in mills, real estate and bank stocks, the Bordens lived frugally in an unfashionable part of town. After Sarah's early death, Andrew remarried to Abby Durfee Gray when Lizzie was just 4 years old. Lizzie and her older sister Emma never formed a close bond with their stepmother Abby, and the two girls preferred to remain in each other's company, with Emma taking on a motherly role within their relationship. Tensions simmered for years in the unhappy Borden household. Lizzie and Emma, unmarried spinsters living at home, were cold and resentful towards Abby, referring to her as Mrs. Borden within the home, despite her efforts to build a relationship. While the Bordens possessed considerable wealth from Andrew's successful business ventures, he was a known penny pincher, and Lizzie chafed at their modest way of living. She harboured resentment that her father chose to reside in the less affluent part of Fall River, rather than joining his wealthier cousins who lived in opulence on the hill. Lizzie dreamed of a grander social standing befitting the family's fortune. She yearned to be invited to the lavish ballroom dances and social events attended by Fall River's elite society. However, her father's frugality kept Lizzie on the periphery of the town's upper echelons. This simmering discontent over her modest lifestyle, coupled with tensions with her stepmother Abby, fueled Lizzie's resentment towards her father in the years leading up to the brutal murders. Tensions began to rise the week before the murders, when her father Andrew purchased a house for her stepmother's impoverished half-sister. This only served to further intensify Lizzie and Emma's fury. They felt their father had yet again denied them the lavish lifestyle they deserved as his heirs. The two sisters left the family home to stay in New Bedford, only returning back home a week before the brutal murders. Once back in Fall River, Lizzie stayed in a boarding house for a few days before returning to the Borden house, and according to their 26-year-old Irish maid Bridget Sullivan, both sisters refused to eat with their father and stepmother. In the days before the brutal slayings, a series of ominous events foreshadowed the tragedy to come. The entire Borden family, including the live-in maid Bridget, fell violently ill, sparking fears of poisoning. Abby even confided in her doctor the day before her death about suspicions that the bread may have been tampered with. Lizzie also revealed her concerns to a friend, hinting that she was concerned that a disgruntled business associate of her father may have been trying to harm them. Was this genuine worry, or was the cunning Lizzie laying the groundwork for her future defence? On August 3, 1892, the day before the brutal Borden killings, an unexpected visitor arrived at the family home, Lizzie's maternal uncle, John Vinicum Morse. Morse showed up around 1:30 p.m, oddly carrying no luggage despite travelling from outside of town. Morse spoke privately with Andrew and Abby Borden upon his arrival, but did not encounter Lizzie that day, though he claimed to have heard her return home later that evening. His reasons for the unannounced visit remained unclear. The next morning, Morse arose early and departed the Borden residence around 8:48 a.m. to pay a visit to another niece living over a mile away on the hill. Morse stated he remained at this niece's home from approximately 9:30 a.m. until 11:20 a.m., a crucial window of time spanning both Andrew and Abby's horrific murders back at the family home. A sickly Andrew left the family home not long after Uncle John, while Abby went upstairs to clean the guest bedroom. Abby had asked Bridget to wash the outside windows. Bridget went outside to wash the windows around 9 a.m., and Lizzie asked her if she would be out long, to which Bridget replied that she would. While outside, Bridget had a conversation with the neighbour's maid over the fence before beginning her window cleaning duties. It was during this window of time that Abby Borden was brutally murdered upstairs, receiving 19 hatchet blows to the head in the guest bedroom. Crucially, The guest room door was open, meaning if Lizzie had ventured upstairs at all after the murder, she would have inevitably discovered her stepmother's bloodied corpse. When Andrew returned home early around 10:30 a.m., sickly and unaware of his wife's fate, Bridget struggled to let him in the mysteriously locked front door. She testified to hearing what sounded like Lizzie laughing from upstairs during this time. However, Lizzie stated that she had been in the kitchen ironing. Once inside, Lizzie came and helped her father to the couch. At the inquest, Lizzie would claim that her father removed his shoes and asked about Abby's whereabouts, to which Lizzie informed him that her stepmother had gone out after receiving a note from a sick friend. Both of these details are just some of many inconsistencies and contradictions that emerged from Lizzie's various recountings of that fateful morning. In the crime scene photos of Mr. Borden, he can be seen wearing his boots. And despite a reward being offered by the police, no friend came forward to say they had sent Abby Borden a message that morning. Whether intentional deception or an innocent lapse of memory, such glaring errors severely undermined her credibility as a witness. After helping her father, Lizzie informed Bridget of a fabric sale that was taking place at Sargent's. When Bridget didn't seem interested in the fabric sale as she was still feeling ill from the food poisoning, Lizzie suggested she might want to go upstairs for a rest before she served lunch for the Borden family. Was this an attempt by Lizzie to lure Bridget away? According to Lizzie's testimony, she then went outside to the barn for around 20 minutes to search for some fishing equipment while Bridget rested upstairs. It was at some point in that window of time that Andrew Borden was struck 11 times in the face and the side of his head with a hatchet. During the trial, a witness confirmed seeing Lizzie leave the barn around 11:03 a.m. that morning and walk slowly back to the house. Had she been out in the barn looking for fishing equipment, or had she been hiding the hatchet used to kill her father? Around 11:15 a.m., Lizzie's shouts alerted Bridget that something was horribly wrong. Upon discovering the body, Lizzie sent Bridget for the doctor and the police. The police arrived swiftly. Lizzie then asked Bridget and a family friend named Mrs. Churchill to check upstairs for Abby, as she thought she had heard her stepmother return. It is then that they make another nightmarish discovery. Abby's corpse, savagely murdered over an hour earlier and lying in a pool of blood. The nature of the attacks pointed to someone with easy household access who harboured an intensely personal hatred for the victims. The autopsies were carried out in the family's dining room and samples were taken to test for poisons after Abby's previous confession to the doctor that she thought they might have been poisoned intentionally. The investigation into the brutal Borden murders quickly focused on Lizzie as the prime suspect. Her potential motive as an heiress to her father's wealth, coupled with her bizarre behaviour, made her an easy target for prosecution. Lizzie's accounts of her whereabouts and actions on that fateful morning were inconsistent and muddled, possibly due to the morphine administered by her doctor to calm her nerves. It was even more damning when Lizzie's friend found her burning a dress in the kitchen stove just days after the murders. Lizzie said that she was merely disposing of a dress stained with paint, an act that did little to dispel the cloud of suspicion gathering around her. However, the Borden family had been decorating their home earlier that week, and Lizzie's dressmaker did confirm that Lizzie had mentioned getting paint on her new dress. It also emerged that Lizzie had attempted to purchase prussic acid, a deadly poison, from a local drugstore just one day prior to the killings. But Lizzie claimed this was so she could clean a sealskin cloak. The judge did not allow this evidence into court, as it was ruled a remote incident without connection, and no poison was found in the bodies following the autopsy. When combined with her potential inheritance motive and long-simmering resentments, Lizzie's behaviour was starting to form an increasingly guilty portrait. The murder of the Bordens created a media frenzy, and when her trial began in New Bedford on June 5, 1893, the nation was captivated. The prosecution painted Lizzie as a cold, greedy woman who hacked her parents to death out of hatred for her stepmother and resentment over her modest upbringing and inheritance she felt was owed to her. While the Borden murder case captivated the nation, the police work itself came under scrutiny for potential missteps that may have allowed crucial evidence to slip through the cracks. One of the most glaring criticisms was the failure to immediately confiscate the clothing Lizzie Borden was wearing on the day of the brutal killings. It wasn't until several days later that her dress was finally taken into evidence. The search of Lizzie's bedroom itself was described as cursory at best, and officers gave only a quick glance around the home, checking for potential intruders, rather than conducting a thorough sweep that could have uncovered bloody garments, potential weapons, or other incriminating evidence. Most damningly, the police never located the murder weapon definitively. A hatchet head with no handle was found in the basement, suggesting the handle may have been removed to hide evidence. However, no traces of blood were found on the head. One of the most perplexing pieces of evidence from the crime scene was Andrew Borden's coat found neatly folded under his head on the sofa where his mutilated body lay. This seemingly innocuous detail sparked one of the most enduring theories about how Lizzie may have committed the murders while covering her tracks. The theory speculates that by wearing the coat backwards over her clothing, its long length could conceal her entire body and any blood spatter from the imminent attack. With the coat shielding her from head to toe, she could have struck him repeatedly with the hatchet without risk of spatter staining her own clothing. After the brutal blows, Lizzie allegedly removed the now blood-soaked coat and folded it up neatly, placing it under Andrew's head on the couch. This would create the illusion that the blood staining the coat was merely from his wounds leaking onto the makeshift pillow. Proponents argue this could explain the lack of blood evidence found on Lizzie's clothing, which was a major hole in the prosecution's circumstantial case against her. However, critics counter that forensic experts at the time should have noticed any telltale spatter patterns on the coat itself that didn't match Andrew's wounds. Was the coat used as an improvised butcher's smock by a cunning Lizzie Borden, or was it simply a tragic coincidence? In a verdict that stunned everyone, the all-male jury found Lizzie not guilty after just over an hour of deliberation. Despite the prosecution's efforts, the evidence was ultimately circumstantial, and the jury struggled to believe that a woman of Lizzie's standing could be the axe-wielding monster they portrayed. Lizzie walked free, but the dark cloud of suspicion never left her. She and Emma promptly inherited Andrew's fortune of over $300,000, nearly $10 million in today's money. They purchased an affluent home on the hill, which they named Maplecroft, and Lizzie began using the name Lisbeth. However, Lizzie's newfound riches came at the price of social isolation when the residents of Fall River ostracized her. She lived with her sister Emma for a while, until they too had a falling out and Emma left. The sisters never spoke to each other again, and Lizzie died taking any secret of the Borden murders to her grave in 1927 at age 67. Her infamy was immortalized in the famous nursery rhyme, "Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Over a century later, the legend of Lizzie Borden continues to captivate and disturb. The house where the brutal slayings occurred has become a macabre museum, with many visitors claiming to experience paranormal activity. Theories still swirl as to Lizzie's guilt or innocence. Some believe she conspired with the maid Bridget Sullivan, or that her uncle John Morse, who arrived unannounced before the murders, had a hand in the crimes. Others speculate that there was a killer on the loose in Fall River. Regardless of the truth, Lizzie Borden has become a cultural anti-hero. Her story has inspired countless films, shows, and artistic depictions, cementing her as one of America's most notorious figures. Was she a cunning murderess who escaped justice? An unwitting victim caught in a web of circumstance? Or did some other dark truth lie behind those hatchet blows over a century ago? The mystery lives on, fueled by an enduring public obsession with this most gruesome and baffling of crimes.